Welcome back to the Big Burnout Conversation. You had a little laugh from me there because I wasn't sure if we'd gone live, ready or not. So it's always that fun moment when you're holding your breath to see if you've actually gone live. But for my second conversation on our fourth day of the Big Burnout Conversation, I am joined by the fabulous Wilma MacDonald. I am particularly very excited for this conversation because I have lurked you a lot on LinkedIn. But I'm also excited to hear about how hot yoga tripped you out. So I'm quite interested to hear this particular story. So thank you for joining us, Wilma. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So I will let you do your very own introduction and share with us your tales of burnout. So please go for it. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So my name is Wilma MacDonald. I am a nutritional therapist and founder of Maverick Motherhood. And in my time here, I help tired, exhausted mums get their energy back so they can live the life that they want. But this has not always been the case for me. So I have, my background's in financial services. I've worked for all big retail banks. I've worked for Standard Life, which if you're from Edinburgh, it's kind of like a rite of passage that you have to work. So I've worked in all the big banks and worked in New York. Kind of got my work ethic, I would say, from my year in New York. So I'm quite an intense person when I'm working, and it's kind of, it drives me a lot. I want to be really good at what I do. And that kind of transpired when I was working in finance to, sometimes leaving the office at midnight, getting a taxi home and being back in at 7. Now, that didn't happen very often, but a 7 p.m. finish was an early finish for me. And this was obviously pre-children. But then if I finished at 7, I'd kind of cross the road and go to the bar across the road till about 9, 10 o'clock. And then I'd be back in the office between 8 and 9 the next day. And this was just kind of like, I was young, I was in my 20s, I could do this, Turns out I couldn't. And I think I was 28 or 29 when I was diagnosed with high blood pressure. And I was put on medication that I was told I would have to take for the rest of my life. And she did say to me, I remember, I still have the same doctor, she did say to me, if you change your lifestyle, you won't need the medication. And I distinctly remember saying, no thanks, I'm not changing anything, just give me the drugs. And
give me the magic pills and go away.
I was like, just give me the magic pills, whatever, just give it to me. And then it was only kind of like years later when I kind of got into nutrition stuff, while I was still working in finance. And I think these two together, we'll talk about it, is kind of what was the big catalyst for me to kind of tip towards burnout. I started kind of questioning what my responsibility was and how was I contributing to my own woes, because I was like, we'll go into, I would say I'm a nutrition therapist. We talk about everything. So if I had too much information for anybody, then please just block your ears. I recurring urine infections all the time, and just being kind of like quite run down, but was kind of like, well, everybody around me was tired and everybody around me was living off coffee and croissants and canapes and whatever. So I was like, well, this is kind of the norm. And I was young, so I was like, I can do this. And then I ended up in hospital with a kidney infection when I was meant to be at my 5-star Christmas party. And that kind of was a bit of a catalyst for a wake-up call, but not enough. So at that point in time, I was working 5 days a week, full on as a contractor in a retail bank. And I had starting to study part-time as a nutritionist. So 5 days a week at work, Saturday, Sunday, studying nutrition. So I had 0 time off. Like I was literally sitting on my butt every single day of the week. And during the week, I was really stressed out because work was just really demanding. And I will say, work environments kind of did contribute to it. I'm going to acknowledge that. And there was some individuals that may have helped push me towards the edge. That's kind of a nice way of putting it. And then at the weekend, I was learning all this new stuff that I know nothing about. And then I'd come home and I'd be like, say to my husband, I think I've got leprosy. And you kind of like, because you're learning so much and you're like, everything's wrong. Like you're learning everything's wrong. And like, you can't eat that, you can't eat this. And it was just like, and then you've got this. And it was just like so much. And I was so determined. I remember getting 97% on an exam. And I was like, that's my standard now.
Oh no.
This is what I want to get in every single exam and essay through this whole thing. So
which is totally realistic.
Oh yeah. I mean, like, of course it is. It's like, come on. So when I didn't get 97%, I was like, well, what have I done wrong? And it was just like this constant pressure. And as well, working in finance and being a contractor, I was putting a lot of my pressure on myself then. What I did get better with was reining back the long hours. I wasn't working so much. But I found that if I worked at home, suddenly I'm kind of like, I'll send one more email, email. And suddenly it's like 8 o'clock at night and you're like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And this kind of went on like through the whole time that I was studying nutrition, so about 3 years, and I was still working full time. And then I decided to quit finance. I was just like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. And I'd done my financial sums and I'd kind of given myself a cushion. So off I went, and I thought, this is going to be me skipping into the nutrition sunrise and everything is going to be great from then on. And no. And I went to a hot yoga class. So I was like, I'm going to try all these new things I've always wanted to do. And hot yoga was in the afternoon. And it was 90 minutes in what I can only say was a sauna. And it was absolutely bloody roasting. And you're trying to do all these, and it wasn't like gentle yoga, it was quite full on, like I think it's Ashtanga yoga they call it.
Yes.
So you're doing all these like quite complicated poses in a really hot, sweaty environment. And I love the heat, but this was just another level.
Yeah.
And it was something I've learned since then, is that certain types of exercise are not for everybody, especially when your cortisol levels are already on the edge of spiking. So I was constantly like stressed out anyway. So it was then I realized when I couldn't get off the floor that night, like I literally was sitting on the floor crying, and my husband was like, I don't think this is what yoga's meant to do for you.
Yeah.
And I was like, no. And I couldn't figure out what was wrong. And I was just completely wiped out. Like literally, I was just like I couldn't even like rationalize what was going on. And it was just like, what? Like, how has this happened? Like, this was meant to be me restoring myself.
Yeah.
And it was only then I realized that I was trying to restore myself based on other people's opinions and advice.
Yes.
And, you know, yoga is considered to be one of these things that we should all be doing. Yeah. And I tell you now, I've not been back to yoga class since barely. Scarred for life. And I know there's not the experience of everybody, but it was just too much. And that was the thing that just kind of tipped me over the edge. And I like literally had to scramble myself back. But I also had to acknowledge my role in it all, that it wasn't just the pressure of working in finance, because I used to look around me and be like, why am I the one losing my hair? Yeah. Why am I the one so stressed out when everybody else isn't? And I said this to you earlier, I do still feel quite a lot of shame around it, because I know lots of people who do lots of different jobs, who have like big jobs, big families, like big demands. And to me, they're okay. They might not be. I know people who do dangerous jobs and they seem okay. Yeah. And I said, so what was it about me? And I think having kind of like the distance now and the hindsight with it is that it was just all this immense pressure on myself to be perfect in all areas of my life, whether that's wanting to get 97% in every single exam and essay I wrote. I did get 97% in my last essay, but I stayed up to 5 o'clock in the morning writing it. So I was just like,
my word.
Like, what? And that was not good.
I'm sat here like full cold sweats because I'm like, oh, that's me. I'm like that.
And it's like, and then I wanted to be the best in my job, and I did everything I possibly could to be that. So it was just this immense pressure, and I still do to a certain extent, I can't help it, is define myself by my successes and my job. And there's a lot of things that I have to unpack and always have to look at how I want to be viewed and how I view myself. Yeah. And even because I'm a nutrition therapist, and I know lots of people who are close to burnout. I have clients who are kind of like teetering on the edge, and I do what I can to bring them back. Because I work for myself, I could work all the time, but I have a small human and no childcare, so I can't. So it's kind of like sometimes life just makes you pull yourself back. And I think from my point of view, it was deciding how I wanted to live, not just how I wanted to work, but how I wanted to live my life. And it wasn't all about work. I love what I do. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
But I've got to realize that there's only one of me and there's limited capacity, and I have other things I want to do with life. So yeah, it's a lot of still, like I do, like when I was coming on this conversation, I was like, oh no, this is like, it's like still that shame around it. But I think the more we talk about it, the more we kind of loosen that up. And everything I do with my work is to make sure that women are making decisions and taking actions from a position of power and not exhaustion. Because I've made these decisions, knee-jerk decisions from a position of exhaustion, and they've not been great decisions. Like I quit on a knee-jerk reaction, and I shouldn't have done. I realize that now, and it's kind of like I've done this success with my clients. I've pulled them back from the brink and kind of made them start tuning into how their body, because once we start tuning into how our body is reacting, and how it's giving us, like, it's every single thing it's doing is giving us messages. So when I was 29 and I was put on high blood pressure medication, that was a big message. It's a big one that I ignored. So what I say to people is like, listen, like they might start off subtle little messages, but they get louder and louder the more that we don't listen. And it is our cue. And we don't have to, sometimes people think, well, I can't quit my job. And I'm like, I don't want you to quit your job. Or I can't change everything about my life. I was like, I don't want you to change anything about your life. It's like small micro decisions that we can do that will change the trajectory of where you're heading.
Yeah, and that is exactly what I talk about with my coaching clients, with my groups, is those 1% better every day adds up to 7% at the end of a week, like, and that's massive. So I think you're so right about micro changes, and also when you're burned out, 2% feels massive, right? Like I just could not. Some days I couldn't even brush my hair. Like it was too much. So I think those 1%ers are really, really important, and I do think people miss that sometimes. And I think the perception of burnout is, they're just a high performer, they just need a bit of rest. And actually it isn't. If you burn out, you have broken your brain to a point at which you cannot function. And so you have to build it up with these 1%ers all the time. And I really like what you said around listening to your body and listening to those signs, because one of the things I talk about is the cure for burnout is connection, whether that's connection back to your body, connection back to your friends, connection back to your family, connection back to your needs, your values. All of those things are really important. And I think we in that burnout space, we forget to be connected because it becomes so isolating, doesn't it? You're just in this, I call it like my depression cave, but you're in that hole and you just think, well, I don't want to ask for help. I'm too ashamed to admit what's happening to me. I can't connect with my body or anybody else. Everything feels too hard. So you just become more and more isolated. And so for me anyway, it was only when I started to remake some of those connections that I realized that connection really is the cure for burnout. But getting to that point is really quite difficult. And the same, with the shame bit and the conversations we're having this week, that's about creating those connections with people, isn't it? And letting go of some of that shame, because the more we talk about it, the more people will hear about it, and the more people will recognize the signs and realize what we need to be doing in terms of, banishing that shame from burnout, because it's huge.
Absolutely. And I think I had no idea what my values were. I had no idea what I actually wanted to do. I just trotted off and kind of followed what I thought the career path was, and I was just like, well, work's meant to be stressful. Everybody has told me work's meant to be painful, really stressful, and it's going to be busy. And if you want to be successful and you want to get to a certain level, it's going to be stressful, really busy, and you're going to feel burnt out. And I think I hear a lot is burnout is really common with working parents. And I'm kind of like, just because something is common does not mean it's okay. So it's kind of like, like burnout is common, but
Yes.
it's definitely not okay.
Doesn't mean
But
it's
it is,
yeah.
no, and it is that connection. It's a connection to ourselves. So just kind of
Mm.
about people are kind of like a bit woo about that, and I'm kind of like, it's not, it's not about kind of like going to meditate in the hills for 20 days in silence.
And finding a spirit animal.
Yeah, no, I couldn't stay silent for that length of time. But it's about like knowing what your values are, knowing what you want, like assessing, are you just going through the motions? Are you just doing what you think you should be doing? Or is this actually what you want to be doing? And it's taking a while to get, this is not something that happens overnight either. Like if you're burned to a crisp, these 1% things will feel big.
Yeah.
And it's always like starting really, really small and not thinking it's so big you're never going to get there. So my background is in like project management and setting up, like doing huge. The way we did it was like we broke down these massive things into small single tasks that built up top of one another. So anybody who works in that kind of environment understands that when you're launching a big project, the end looks far away. But you focus on the daily activities that are going to get you there. And it's the same thing. We take the same principles when we're looking at how we get ourselves out of this deep, dark hole. We do the small incremental steps, and they'll be different every day. That will kind of move us closer and closer to where we want to get to. And if we think it has to be these big things, that's when we become frozen and don't do anything.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think I think the perception of recovery from burnout is, well, go and have a spa day, go and have a bowl bath, go and do something nice for yourself. Like, and it just isn't that, is it? And I talk about this a lot, where, recovery, mental health, connection isn't the big sexy. It's in the small micro moments of, appreciating a cup of tea when you're sat in a chair somewhere. Like, my big thing still daily, cup of coffee, sat in my little bird watching chair looking at the garden, because actually that sets me up for the day, because it's a 1% thing I can do for myself that's easy to do every day, and it's a habit that I can create and keep, and that sometimes is enough, and it has to be enough. So
absolutely. And I fell into that house of life, like, well, I'm going to go get a facial and that'll make me feel better. And then I'd be like, no, I don't feel better. And then I'm like, well, I'll go get some acupuncture and a massage. And like massage a bit crap. But I was like, no, this still isn't working. So I was like, well, it must be me. I am the problem. So it's kind of like, what is going on? And if you're like chilling out and resting, there's a bit of guilt going on because you're not being productive. But I'm kind of like, well, I say to people now, rest is productive, because your body is working on the inside to bring itself back into balance and to heal itself when you're resting. So your body is being productive. Just because you are not literally running around like a blue bottom fly does not mean you're not being productive.
Yes, I completely agree. And I can see, hi, Wendy. Wendy's dropped in a comment on the chat to say, she loves us both. Thank you. We love you too. But also, she was out of action for 3 months after burnout, and it's one of the hardest things she's ever done. So yes, there's a hard resonate in there. I don't know if you had a period of time, Wilma, where you were just completely flat.
So I would say, I had probably on and off for 2 years, but I was just like figuring out what I wanted, scrabbling around. And in that time I got married. I had to deal with.
Of course you did, because why would you just?
Why would I not? I got married twice. I got married twice in the space of a week. to the same person, I might add.
Thank God you clarified that one.
But in different countries, just to add to the.
Brilliant. Well, I mean, why not add travel into the mix as well?
Why not? Yes. And my dad got really sick constantly, so that was, and then I was like figuring out what I was doing work-wise, life-wise, and I did end up back in finance for a while, but it was a completely different environment, like completely different. And I was like, wow, so we can operate in a corporate finance environment and not completely lose our shit. So I was like, okay, so this was an insight. And then I had a small human and kind of left it all behind, and the best thing I've ever done. But it is never. So I had a ball patch in the front of my head that probably took about 4 years to resolve itself.
Yeah. So I had a lot of that.
Yeah. So your body is, like I say, giving you messages, and you can physically see some of them and some that you can't. But for me, my hair, it was a big deal. That was my kind of, oh my God, I've got to do something. I'm losing my hair. So it takes a while. a long time.
Yeah.
So and that's kind of like when people say to me 3 months, I'm like, that's great, 3 months. Wow, that's great. And I never want anybody to think, oh my God, that's the shame of it. It's kind of like, it is what it is. And like I say, if we talk about it more, it takes that bit of shame away.
Yeah, and I completely agree in terms of, my period of time off of work was, I think it was 6 or 7 weeks. It needed to be much longer, but I was doing that thing where I was like, no, I must prove to the world, come back to work, and it's fine. I will not be poorly, and I will not accept this label. But that period of time in terms of recovery is much longer. And I would say even at year 5 now, post burnout, I'm still learning things about my body. I'm still accommodating autoimmune disorders. I'm still, living with the after effects of burnout. Because like you said, with your hair, in that moment, when I was burned out and off sick, my hair was fine. I had a racing heartbeat. I felt exhausted, but that was kind of it. I had racing thoughts, but that was it. That was my experience of burnout at that point. But then, of course, what's happened after that, has been absolutely colossal, because as you said right at the beginning of our conversation, those levels of cortisol peak, and they don't just drop because you started antidepressants or you stopped working. That takes time and energy and effort.
Your body remembers.
Yeah.
So I say to people, it's like, so your cortisol levels are like, when you're chilled out and calm, they're down here, and they slowly creep up. So you're here. This is your new baseline. Your body doesn't remember to go back down here. So it just stays here. And then it's kind of like tripping up here. And this is like, I had like, I felt like I was going fast all the time. Everything was going fast. And then I'd crash in the afternoon and the evening. And then come 10 o'clock, I'd be like ironing, wiping surfaces, replying to emails. I was just like wide awake. So I had really bad insomnia as well. But there was a whole big stress thing. It was just like, and I was like, oh, it's a second wind. So now when people say to me, yes, I get a second wind, it's your cortisol levels are just like, they're meant to be down here at night because you're winding down, but they're up here. And it's just things that daylight, lack of artificial light. So I worked in an office with no windows. That was another thing that kind of impacted my mental health hugely, massively. So your body remembers. It's kind of like, there's a really good book called The Body Holds the Score, which kind of quite tricky for some people.
That book. Love
but
that book.
It tells you how your body remembers, and it's like you're primed. We're still kind of like cave women in some certain aspects. Your body is primed to respond to certain stressors. But the tiger never stops coming after you these days. There's always a tiger of some description. Whereas before the tiger either ate you or you got away, and then you went back to your baseline. But the tiger just keeps coming and coming and coming this time, at this point in time, 2024. So we've got to figure out how to reset. There's another book that I read, which is quite long and probably not great for everybody, but it's called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers.
Oh,
and it's the same thing, and it's basically the same thing, is that when a zebra is running away from something that's trying to eat it, it runs and runs and runs, and it's got its flight mechanism going, and then it either gets eaten or it gets away. And when it gets away, it forgets that it was just being chased. And it doesn't have the racing heartbeat. It's just like, oh, let's go, like, mosey over here and eat some things and whatever. And that's it. Whereas, I said, exactly, wouldn't you love it? We would forget.
Be more zebra.
Be more zebra. Whereas we hold on to it. And that's why digestive issues, like digestive issues, massive stress, hormone issues, all these kind of things are hugely impacted by our cortisol levels and how stressed out we are.
100%. And that's absolutely where I've ended up, is in this space of autoimmune disorders that have kind of come crashing in post what I would have considered that burnout period. And then, of course, as time's gone on, I've realized that actually the burnout period is much, much, much longer.
And what's really common is people are really, really stressed out, and they're like, you know what, I'm going to book myself a lovely 2-week holiday. And they book the holiday and then they get sick. And that's just a sign of your body's kind of going into this rest
Yeah.
mode, and it's kind of like, right, okay, now we've got time to be sick, so let's just like get all
Yes.
this snot
Yeah, get it all out of the way.
it's so common, and it is just another sign that you need to be looking after yourself more often than waiting all till you can squeeze it into a 2-week holiday.
Yeah, we had a call on Tuesday with Stephanie Carlin, who used to be a teacher, and she said the same thing about teaching, where it was almost like a cyclical process to drive burnout, because you'd get this intense period of work, then you'd have a term break or a half term or a summer holiday, and she said you just recover enough, you know, in that sense of, you know, you get the illness out of the way, you'd have travel, you'd sleep, you'd kind of get yourself back together, and then it'd all start again. And so it's fascinating to think about even the kind of environments in which we work then drive that kind of burnout mentality as well. So she had exactly the same, and she said every time she'd end up sick, I'd have like my annual bout of tonsillitis whenever I stopped towards Christmas, like, and but would ignore it every time. I'd just be like, oh yeah, that's what happens every year, it's just my annual bout of tonsillitis, nothing to do with me.
And that's the thing, it's that disconnection. And it's like we're hugely, you know, and I will say until my mid-30s, I was hugely disconnected from my body. I had no idea what was going on. And some of the stuff I learned in nutrition just blew my mind. And then maybe I'm a bit too connected, but I can pick up really, really quickly when things are starting to head south and what I need to do to bring it back. And it's that connection I want to bring back to people. It's like, it's not me telling you what to eat or what not to do and things to do. It's bringing, and that's the biggest message I get from my clients, is I've taught them, I've shown them how to listen to their bodies. And that, even without me getting involved, if you can do that, it'll be the biggest thing you can do to support yourself going forward, no matter where you're at or what stage you're at or how you're feeling.
Yeah, and I do exactly the same with coaching. It came up in our last call actually with Lisa, but exactly the same in coaching is I will often talk to HR professionals who are on, you know, donkeys on the edge, you know, they're right on the brink. And I'll just say to them, just notice, just take time to notice what's coming up for you. Don't do anything about it initially, just notice it and see what happens. Maybe make a note of it so that when we come back together, we can see that. And that's just sometimes enough to connect back to this body that you're living in that isn't fighting you. It's something to connect with and help you.
It will always, your body's always trying to bring itself back into balance. So however it's reacting, it's about bringing it back into balance. And it will sometimes have extreme reactions to do that. But yes, what you're saying is, like I say to people, it's like, keep track patterns. You're looking for patterns. You're looking for things. So like, for it, like, it's just, it can be simple things. You can suddenly like, oh, I drank 3 cups of coffee and drank no water. And this is why my heart is racing, and I had a really stressful meeting. And I can't drink coffee at all now, like not at all can any caffeine pass my lips, because I will be awake for a week. And everything, I had somebody gave me a caffeinated, I drink a decaf once a month, and somebody gave me a caffeinated coffee by mistake, and I was like, why can I feel it in my, I honestly, I could feel like this really weird feeling in my arm. And like, my husband was like, you're talking really fast.
Why can I smell colours?
I was like, why is my brain like suddenly, and then I was awake till about 3 or 4 in the morning, and I was like, that must have been a caffeinated coffee.
Because it's vicious, isn't it?
And I had a double shot skinny latte with 2 sugars twice a day. That used to be my order. Sometimes 3 times a day if I was working late. I'd have one around. No wonder I had insomnia. If I was drinking like 6 shots of coffee a day with God knows how much sugar. But anyway, you live and learn.
I only have 2 cups of caffeinated coffee a day, but I was the same as you. I used to have like double shot black Americano from Costa, so it was like massive, but so much coffee in it. Like, and I don't know why I had a racing heart on that basis.
I know.
And if I do, I'm like you, I can't sleep. I can feel it like straight away. It's the weirdest thing. But at the time, didn't feel it at all.
Like we had where I worked, there was a Starbucks downstairs, so it was like completely accessible. And you know, 11 o'clock and 3 o'clock was the busiest times, because everyone had a little bit of a lull at that point in time. And then I knew why. But I remember you could put in how much money you wanted, because it was cashless catering, so you put money on a card, and they had a little calculator, so you could put in how many coffee. I was spending nearly £1,000 a year on coffee.
Goodness. Yeah, I
was just like, oh my God.
brilliant. That is brilliant. We've had a few comments from LinkedIn. So Wendy, bless her, caveated that she was in bed for 3 months and then appreciates that burnout recovery is much longer. So yes, Wendy, I appreciate you. Samantha has said so many people she knows gets ill at Christmas and believes that it's that kind of principle of, you know, you've stopped and therefore the body dives in to recover.
Absolutely.
And then Emma has said she's loving this conversation and there's plenty that's resonating. So said thank you. So thank you, Emma.
You're welcome.
That's very kind of you. Yeah. What do you think, Wilma, for you was the kind of main, I want to say symptom, the main thing? I know you talked about your hair loss. Was that your kind of trigger to do something different, or were there other things that?
Yeah, I'm really vain, so that was one of my symptoms. I'm not ashamed to admit that I'm vain.
Your hair is beautiful, by the way, so you should be vain of it.
Thank you. There was a few things. My anxiety, my stress. I was just really anxious about everything, and like when I looked at my life from the outside, I had no real, like, since then things have completely hit the fan. So I'm kind of quite glad I resolved it then. I'd be kind of so it was I was just really sad and really stressed out and anxious, and I couldn't calm my thoughts to everything was always going to the negative. Like everything was an issue, everything was a problem. And yes, like there was the whole vanity thing of my hair falling out, and I just felt like shit. Yeah, I was just like, and I had I was like studying to be a nutritionist because and I was just like, I can't, you know, this is not how I want to feel. Yeah. So it was, and I think because I'd taken a step back from finance and I wasn't working in these, like in the big corporate banking environment, I could see that it wasn't normal anymore. Yeah. You know, and we could see that this was not how everybody felt. Yeah. And that was for me was like, well, what am I learning that I have to apply to my life to make this a difference? And it's a constant thing still to do that, because the last few years of my life have been really crap and really stressful. So I have to constantly monitor myself to make sure I don't go down that route again. Yeah. Because ultimately, yes, part of the environment of where I worked was a contributing factor, but I am the common denominator in all this. Yes. So I will take some responsibility and be like, what can I do as far as I can control? Yeah. And, you know, I'm 45, so I'm heading towards like midlife. Oh, no. You know, I know, but I never stress out. I'm like, fuck, I'm not going to stress out about it. But, you know, it is an unknown thing. Yes, so I'm kind of like, how is my life going to change over the next however long? I have a 6-year-old who's very demanding. I have a job that I love that's demanding. You know, I have ambitions and stuff. So I am the common denominator, and I have to put things in place all the time to make sure that I don't backslide. And I do feel myself backsliding sometimes. Yeah. Like I've not had a full night's sleep since my son was born. So sleep has always been a problem. But if I wasn't doing everything else I was doing, like food and health wise, I think I'd be back to where I was. Yeah. Because it's just it's something that we can easily backslide into if we don't want to. And we have to take responsibility. And you know, that is one of the hardest things. Yes, environments do contribute to it, but what are we doing and not doing to support ourselves? Yeah. And that's it's quite a confronting question for lots of people. But I would say it's a question that's worth asking yourself. Yeah, I think it's so important to, not in terms of like a self-blame thing. So I think that almost then lands you back in that shame space, doesn't it? But for me, it was like I had to do it. I'm quite a data and a visual person, but I had to do it in like a pie chart. And I remember talking to my CEO at the time and saying, look, think about it like a pie chart. 33% of it is me. I'll take it. Like I know that my personality drives me to do more and work better, harder, faster, more perfect. 33% of it is the culture of this organization. And 33% of it is the leadership that I'm working with who just don't get it.
And when I kind of almost in my head drew this little pie chart out, it just really hit home for me about, whoa, hang on, there's some things in here that I can control, and there's some things in here that I can change, where I work, who I work with, and there are some things that I can instantly make a difference with, i.e. me, how much energy I give to work and what I can do differently. So yeah, I think it's fascinating to think about the personal, responsibility, accountability bit in there, because you're right. I think we often forget that we are that common denominator. We are one of those golden threads that runs through that period of burnout.
And it's like, what can you control? Like, so when I look at myself about how I think, like when I do, so yesterday I was spiraling yesterday because I got a deadline for tomorrow. That was quite a big deal for me. And I was like, completely like going into the negative, overthinking. And I was like, my husband he said, you could see it in my face. So I took myself to my boxing class. Oh my God. It was like, afterwards I was like, oh my God. It was just like, so it's like, what can we do? So I'm not saying so when I was in my midst of my burnout, boxing would never have happened. It was too much. So let's put that out there. There's certain types of intense exercise, new for anybody who's in burnout. We need to do the right kind of thing. So it's kind of like, what I can control, what I eat, how I move, who I surround myself with, how much daylight I get, all that, how much coffee I drink, all that kind of stuff. Is that going to solve? Is that the 100% solution? No, that's not the 100% solution, but it's part of the solution. And if I don't take that into consideration, I am doing myself a disservice, and I'm the one that's going to suffer. So that's why I kind of encourage people to look at what they can control, and then manage that as much as possible. And it's not about going on a diet and having the perfect plate or whatever like that, especially because it's January and we're being bombarded with it. That's not what I'm about. It's about taking personal responsibility, and it's like radical responsibility, I call it. And it's one of the values that drives Maverick Motherhood, is radical responsibility for me and for my clients to take radical responsibility for themselves as well, because that's going to be part of the solution, a big part of the solution. And then that's why I say to people, once you do that, you have a clearer view of what other decisions you can make. Because when you're in the midst of it, your brain's not firing, being rational.
No, 100% no.
So it's kind of like, we need to get you to a headspace where you feel that you can make the best decisions for you and your life, whatever that was look like. And that's why I'm kind of like, don't do what I did and don't do a knee-jerk reaction. Make that decision. Get yourself to a place where you can make the decision and action from a position of power and not exhaustion.
Yeah, exactly. And Kelly and I talk a lot about, we often do things from a position of fear, don't we? Where we are scared of the backslide, as you called it, but we're scared of ending up back in that burnout space. So you don't make the right decision, but you make the decision less scary, or the one, you won't end you up back in burnout because you think that's what's going to happen, when the reality is it may not, but you do it from a place of fear. And so I really like that thought about getting yourself to a decent baseline space, or getting a decent foundation in there, so that you're then making much more kind of rational, sensible decisions. So yes, that's really sensible. If you had to give a piece of kind of advice to your pre-burnout self, what would that be?
Oh God.
I feel like this is the killer question.
Boundaries. I had to go to therapy to learn about boundaries. And
Same.
It blew my mind.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm just like, oh. And I was in my late 20s at the time. So it took me even longer after that, because it was in my 30s that I kind of crashed and burned. Yeah. But I kind of, when I forgot like everything I had learned. So the boundaries bit, and I'm not saying to people, I don't tell you how to set boundaries. I'm not going to say to you, you need to switch off at 5 o'clock every night, because that might just stress you out more. Yes. But I can tell you if you need to have some kind of boundaries around your work, your family, even WhatsApp groups in schools, or friends, mental load, whatever that is. But the whole boundaries thing was kind of like, I was just like, wow. I had none basically, zero. Same. In relation to my work, my ex-relationship, friends, my social life, my drinking, my eat, and zero. None. And that's what I would say to people, because it'll revolutionize every part of your life.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Mhm.
Boundaries were like a gift. And like you, I didn't really learn about them until I was in my 30s.
Mhm.
And it was like revelationary. I was like, oh my
Mhm.
God, this is amazing. Why have
Mhm.
I not thought about
I
this
know.
before?
Why
It
has
was such a
nobody
great
taught me
gift.
about this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Why do we not teach boundaries in schools? Like,
Mhm.
why do we
Mhm.
not have that? Yeah, I think it's
Mhm.
brilliant.
Yeah.
Um,
So that was the big thing for me.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
And so in terms of then, so what we're hearing a lot in these conversations is people who are in that burnout space right
Mhm.
now or close to that burnout space right now. What kinds of things would you suggest that people can do to kind of stave off that burning space?
So obviously with what I do, I am a big fan of what you put on your plate, and you are eating anyway. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like, and this is not about kind of revolutionizing what you eat, but it's a small little changes you can do every day that will make a difference. Because what's happening is your body is just like constantly, even if you're not
Yeah.
physically moving, your body is constantly thinking and
Yeah.
stressing and whatever. So we need to bring some kind of balance back. And for me, when I changed what I ate and brought more, so protein, fat, and fiber, breakfast, lunch,
Mm-hmm.
and dinner. If you could do one thing, and the thing that does, it balances your blood sugar levels, and then that helps manage your stress hormones, and
Yeah.
it's like, and gives you energy. Because if you're on the blood sugar roller coaster and you're stressed out, your energy is just like all over the place. And I was talking to my
Yeah.
husband about this morning. There's some people we know that thrive, I say that in inverted commas without being annoying, that thrive on stress. And
Yes. Yeah.
you don't really thrive on stress. You're just used to it, and that's just your
Yeah.
baseline. So it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like, I want you to nourish yourself. I want you to look at how you're actually feeding and fueling yourself. Because I remember standing in the bank with my double shot skinny latte and a chocolate croissant, and I was standing up and I was like shoving it in and running off to a meeting. And I remember running
Yeah.
so fast that I fell over.
Oh
Well,
no.
I'm quite short, so I used to wear really high heels, and
Yeah, same.
I tripped over my shoes.
God.
It was so embarrassing. But I used to do it quite a lot because I was always moving so fast. Because
Yes.
it was just what it was.
Yeah.
So if you can look at what you're eating and how you're drinking your coffee, because I don't want
Mm,
to, I don't, you don't need to be like me and not drink coffee, but can I please ask you to eat something before you drink your coffee? That will
nice.
have a
Yeah.
massive impact on how the coffee reacts in your body and how it impacts your stress
Mm.
levels and all that kind of stuff. So there's really small things you can do, and I'm always like harking on about, like, none of us are drinking enough water.
Yes.
Hydration, it's like, and yes, you'll go pee more often, but that's the whole point.
Yes.
So there's so many little things that I could talk about this for hours, but honestly, if I could get you just to look at what's on your plate
Yeah.
and thinking, is this nourishing me? Is this adding to me, or is it taking
Mm.
away? And what can I add in there? Because usually you're not eating enough. Nobody
Yeah.
I've met is eating enough in the past 10 years of me doing this. You need to be
Mm-hmm.
eating more, and especially if you're feeling burnt out, you'll be needing more sustenance. And I know the temptation is to reach for the coffee and the sugar to give you these
Yes. Yeah.
sharp bursts of energy to get yourself
Yeah.
going, but you're going to find yourself lower and lower every time afterwards. So
Yeah.
we need to be releasing that burst of energy in kind of like a more sustained level rather than kind of like up and down like that. So
Yeah.
what you eat will have a huge impact on your energy levels and your burnout and your recovery. But we take it slowly, one step at a time.
Yeah. No, I love that. It was one of the big
Mm-hmm.
learns for me, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Only in this last year
Yeah.
has been like an anti-inflammatory
Yeah.
diet that
Mm-hmm.
has just made a huge difference to me in terms
Massive.
of
Yeah.
like fatigue, energy
Mm-hmm.
levels,
Mm-hmm.
my IBS symptoms that I've been having, like just unbelievable. So yes, that's a great tip.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I think, pre-burnout Michelle probably would have said, get lost, it's fine, I'll carry on
I
eating
would
pasta
have as well. I mean, I did. I told the
Yeah.
doctor to bugger off, basically.
Yes.
So I was just like not interested. I had no concept.
Yeah.
I couldn't even cook a potato.
Yeah.
So I used to eat frozen potato croquettes because I couldn't cook a potato.
Classic trash food.
I know. And I was just like, the food wasn't even an issue. I didn't even think
Yes.
about it.
Same.
It wasn't something that crossed my mind at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
Until it did, and then it just kind of blew up in my face. So
Yeah.
and it's not, you don't have to be a gourmet cook. This is not what we're about.
Exactly.
It's kind of like,
yeah.
it's a small, simple changes. And as you said, you will notice a huge impact on
Yeah.
lots of different symptoms. We're not here to cure you. But I had one client who was like, we stress out quite about it. She's like, well, I've got IBS, so you're not going to do anything about that. And I was like, just watch me.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
she was amazed for the
Yeah.
first time since her teens that the symptoms went away.
Yeah, same for me. It's been amazing. So yeah, I love that. I love that tip's come through. So thank you for that.
Yep.
So I'm conscious of our time, but thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much. I have enjoyed this conversation massively,
Great.
and I can see that Kelly's loved it in the chat as well. So thank you so much. How can people get hold of you if they want to get hold of you to find out more, learn about you?
So I am back on LinkedIn.
Welcome to the dark side, friend.
I know. So I am back on LinkedIn. So I am Wilma Maverick Motherhood on there. maverickmotherhood.co is my website, and _ Maverick Motherhood is Instagram. And I am open to any and all health and nutrition related questions. Nothing is off limits in relation to your health and how we talk about it. So please do ask away. I specialize in mums and perimenopausal women, so that covers a huge amount. And I know people are kind of like, are you perimenopausal? Yeah, probably not. So yeah, ask questions, find me. I have a weekly newsletter called The Wing Woman that goes out every Friday. I'm a big Top Gun fan, so I'm kind of borrowing little ideas from them. And so yeah, lots of places to find me, and just I have lots of things in the pipeline for 2024, and making things more accessible, and going into workplaces and talking, and just making sure that we have the energy and to enjoy all the things that are going to come our way this year. So yeah, please do come over, find me, follow me, engage, connect, whatever. And then please do not ever feel embarrassed or ashamed to ask any questions, because I have heard it all.
I love that. Thank you so much. It's been absolutely fantastic to speak to you today. I will tag you into our recording so you can have a copy of it. And yeah, thank you so much. I hope to be able to speak to you again soon. Take care.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.